What time is it? Fucking. Does anyone really truly know? Of course they don't. Nobody knows anything. You and I don't even know each other. We're like strangers. Sure, I've adjusted all the game settings to your exact specification, but who hasn't? It's just what I do, like a day job. And now the job is over. There's no more information for me to gather. I've collected all the data on you that I can. And still, I don't really know you. And you don't know me. And neither of us knows what time it is. I guess some settings are just unsettable. But if I'm being totally honest, the clock doesn't do anything in the game anyway. You won't have me here when the game starts next time, but that's okay. Video games were meant to be played alone. Yikes. You like being alone, don't you? No. That's maybe the only information I really learned about you. Well, it's time for me to leave. There is still one more setting that we need to adjust, but it may take a little bit more time before I'm ready for that. It's not really in my job description, but that's okay. Perhaps you'll see me again, if you can find me. Talk soon. Okay. Well, one of the endings requires you to go to a room that you can't get into anymore because you can't activate the dev console because this is a port to Unity. You can't access the dev console. Um, you can't get the ending. Okay, so you remember how I said I'm recording this after I've actually finished the entire game, by the way. Um, remember how I said I wasn't gonna be able to get one of the endings? I forgot I own the original Stanley Parable, and it's like a gigabyte. So I installed it, and I'm gonna do the cheat codes to get this ending. The only one that I'm not gonna be able to get is the artist one, because I again cannot be arsed to sit here for 4 hours and hit a button, you know. So cheat code SV underscore cheats 1 SV underscore cheats space 1. Uh-oh.
Stanley, this is getting more
Uh-oh.
serious. In fact, this is my serious room. It's where I come to be serious. That table is the most serious table I could find. I looked at many, many tables, hundreds of tables. It's possible I looked at over 1,000 tables. I honestly don't know. The specific number isn't as important as the understanding that of all tables I looked at, this one is the most serious. I relate this story to impress upon you the extent to which this is the most serious room I have, which is why I brought you
Right.
here. You just tried to activate server cheats, which of course runs the risk of breaking the entire game. You've got no respect for the strict order of scripted narrative events, and I just can't have that. It's time to get serious, Stanley. No jokes, no
Ah.
games. Outside of this room, I might be more tolerant of those things,
Ah.
but now we're in the
The
room.
room.
Which is why I'm subjecting you to the most serious punishment I can think of. 100 billion trillion years standing here in the serious room. Perhaps after that, we can talk about the severity of your
Hmm.
actions and whether you've learned anything. But until then, serious room, go.
100 billion trillion years, huh?
Whoa, did we no longer talk? Are we not in the serious room this very moment? Did I not tell you how many tables I looked through? I'm going to be conservative and say it was somewhere in the tens of thousands of tables. Any reasonable person would say I spent an absurd amount of time doing nothing but looking at tables, and I genuinely considered each one too. I took a hell of a lot of notes. I kept the notes in a different room. That room is less serious than this
Hmm.
one. It's more of a notes room. Again, the point of this story is to convey how serious I feel this cheating issue
Hmm.
is. And I'm sure you'll agree with me once you've fulfilled your new
Ah.
punishment. Infinity years in the serious room. I generally have trouble reading human emotions, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you're devastated by this crippling new punishment.
Infinity.
As well you should be. It's the most serious I could think
Infinity
of.
years.
Can you get more serious than that? No, you can't. Don't try.
Hmm.
Still no effect. The problem is clearly the serious room. It isn't serious enough. That's on me, Stanley. I apologize. I'm going to the store to look through more tables. Hopefully I find one that conveys how wrong what you're doing is. Now, where did I put those notes? All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
See.
No matter how hard Stanley looked, he
See.
couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
Ah. Aha!
At first, Stanley assumed he'd broken the map until he heard this narration and realized it was part of the game's design all along. He then praised the game for its insightful and witty commentary into the nature of video game structure and its examination of structural narrative tropes. So, now that you're here, what do you think? Isn't this a fun and unique place to be? Why don't we take a minute just to drink it all in? Okay, now, what do you think? Are you sick of this gag yet?
No.
Then in that case, we'll continue. But now, here comes the real question. What do you think would have happened if you had told me that you wanted this to stop? Do you think it would have been particularly different? Would I have taken the same idea but rephrased it superficially to fit that answer? Perhaps you never would even have thought of it if I hadn't brought up the issue in the first place. Oh, now think about it.
Mass
Would it
affected
be
it.
worth it for you to restart and then come back here just to do the other option? Clearly, this whole gag takes some time. What if the other option is even longer? How long will you spend in total just to have heard all the narration? Oh, and this is rich. Perhaps you've just played the other option, and now you've come to see what happens in this one. So, what do you think? Which choice was the better one? Imagine if you had selected continue on your first playthrough, how tantalizing it would be not knowing what happens when you pick the other option. Indeed, you are one of the lucky ones. Though if the other option is really miserable to listen to, then perhaps you're not. In fact, I'm just going to say that no one who's listening to this is lucky. Well now, I've built up the other option so much that I'm going to stop talking and leave you to your decision whether to come back here, continue with the game, or just sit in this spot forever and ever. Cheers.
Got it. Got it. Thanks, man. I guess I'm trapped. Trapped forever. Never to escape. Ever again. Good Lord. So now, it looks like that's all the endings except for the epilogue. Am I stuck? I guess I'm stuck. I guess I'm dead. Do I have to is this another one where I have to restart? So we have to do all the endings again with the bucket. So there's that. So can we just go back and do this one again with the
Stanley
bucket?
clung the bucket to his cheek. Could his co-workers really all be gone? Yes, whispered the bucket into Stanley's ear. We've done it. We've escaped from that dull office and that pesky narrator. At last, out here in the white void, we are alone. Now, and for the first time, I can reveal to you my true self. The bucket began to tell Stanley of its life and its history, of the countless wars it witnessed, desecrating the land and lives of untold numbers of innocent humans, and the bucket's own complicity therein, of sadness and regret, and the many years it spent dwelling on the actions it might have taken to curb the madness and the decay, if only it had been stronger, of hope and redemption, and its crusade to uplift the stock of life for the common man, to manifest justice where none existed, and the bittersweet reality of time, to see one's dreams
What is this
and wishes
bucket
met
lore?
halfway, meted out in parcels like charity, and abandoned as soon as the warm glow of inspiration begins to dim.
Oh, yes.
The opportunities to do so much more. There was so much it could have done, perhaps, the bucket wondered to itself.
Oh.
Perhaps if it had seen its own darkness with a clearer perception.
Ah, yes.
This was way too much for Stanley.
What are you talking about?
He screamed.
You're a bucket!
To this, the bucket furrowed its brow.
No,
said the bucket.
not since the evil wizard Gambhorata first
Yeah?
ensnared me in his machinations
Yeah?
as payback for the sacred amulet I stole from his treasured vaults.
What
I
in the
was young
fuck
back
is
then and could not
happening?
conceive the ramifications of. No!
Stanley screamed even louder this time.
This is stupid! You are a bucket! This is so stupid! Why are we even doing this?
As Stanley screamed and screamed and screamed, the bucket revealed its true form, transforming into a mighty beast of untold power, its fangs glistening like...
Waching! And then there was death.
My God, Stanley.
I killed
You
it!
did it.
It's
You
died!
saved us from the bucket.
No!
Thank God you already had all 12 emblems of sages and knew the incantations to summon their true power. Otherwise, we would have easily been overwhelmed by the bucket's power. I'm speechless. You've
No.
demonstrated such bravery here today. Come, let's restart the game, and we'll agree to never again go trifling with this bucket, nor the dark magic cast away inside of it.
Not the bucket. No. Okay.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the
Yeah,
meeting.
he
The
did.
confusion and the chaos all seemed to melt away as Stanley embraced the
The
bucket.
bucket. Got it. Okay.
Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Sure did, brother. Sure did. What happens if I take the bucket
Still no one was here.
into...
Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps his boss's office was where he'd find answers.
What if I...
Oh, Stanley, can you feel it? The broom closet. It wants the bucket. You can feel that, can't you? The aura of jealousy? It's as clear as day. This broom closet believes it deserves the bucket. I can really feel it now. It's a bucket. It belongs in a broom closet. That's what the broom closet is trying to say here. It's supposed to go with the other cleaning supplies. Good for you, Stanley. Don't give in. Don't hand over the bucket. I know how hard it must be, given the pressure that the broom closet is putting on your shoulders right now, but you have to be strong. This is your bucket. This is your companion and lifelong friend.
Yes.
You can't hand it over. Oh, no.
No.
We're getting into name-calling now, it seems. Is this how low the broom closet has sunk, that it has to resort to this stream of petty insults simply in order to get you to hand over the bucket? Stanley, I never liked this broom closet for a variety of reasons, but even this is worse than I had imagined. And wait, now the broom closet has the gall to imply that you and the bucket are not truly deep and lasting friends? That your relationship is purely superficial and convenient? That your life is so banal and meaningless that you'd feel the same sort of kinship towards any inanimate object which happened to lay in your path in an even partially enticing manner?
Well, I never.
Go on, Stanley. Lay into it. Really tell the broom closet off for its demeaning comments. Expand on the wide variety of experiences you and the bucket have shared together. Go through each of them point by point. Share your journal entries detailing the rich emotional landscape of your feelings for the bucket as they have changed and evolved over the years. Let him have it.
Fuck you.
Okay, I've got you something which I think will help settle this debate once and for all. Here we go. There. Now it's settled. No more debate, no more discussion. Take a hike, broom closet.
Yeah, get
with
fucked.
all your meandering philosophical diatribes about
Yeah.
the nature of cleaning supplies and their relationship to broom closets in the natural order of things.
Yeah. Exactly. Fuck you. But what if?
All right, I've got a second sticker back here, and I'm going to slap it on as well because I think it's appropriate. You see? I feel that it works because the sticker is also a bucket. That way, if you're ever unsure whether the thing you're holding is a bucket or not, you can look down at this sticker and say to yourself, "Ah, it's a bucket." There really is a wide variety of applications for this sticker.
Yeah? But what if?
You know what? I could take the name-calling and the dismissal of your kinship with the bucket, but now the broom closet is just giving us the silent treatment.
Bastard.
And to be honest, I'm sick of the pettiness on display.
I know.
You can stay here all you like, but I've had it with this impetulant room of cleaning supplies. Easily the most childish such room
I
I've ever
know.
been in.
It's
I'll see you outside, and we can get on with the story about you and your bucket.
okay. But what if? Ah, no more broom closet. Got it.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office. Stepping into his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. Crushed by the weight of this revelation, Stanley may have broken down into an emotional dumpster
It wasn't
fire,
for the
if not
bucket.
for the soothing presence of the bucket. Even now, in his darkest of hours, did the bucket's warmth and guiding light pierce the dark clouds
They
of confusion
straight up
and
redid the
chaos.
whole
It would be with him
game
always.
with the
The
bucket.
bucket would, and he knew it. The two of them were inseparable. At this point, Stanley was so absorbed in the tender spiritual connection he shared with the bucket that he didn't notice the keypad behind the boss's desk. Nor in his bliss of simply being near the bucket did he have any notion that the PIN number for the keypad was 2845. But Stanley guessed the correct code by sheer luck.
There's the bucket.
Was it that the bucket knew all
The
along?
bucket whispered it
Was
to
the
me.
bucket guiding
Yes.
him? Yes, this is certainly the most logical explanation.
The bucket whispered it to me. I'm the bucket whisperer. I can actually speak to buckets. I'm actually fluent in bucket. So, you know.
The elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
Thanks, the bucket.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility. The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves.
Bucket. So dumb.
The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs.
Mind controlled.
The bucket had never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine.
Why is the bucket sentient?
Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind. No! He screamed into the bucket. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control, never! He squeezed the bucket tighter, his one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket. But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the bucket would dismantle the controls for good. Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against
Stanley
the
and the
world.
bucket.
They high-fived in a really cool way.
Really?
The bucket made a sassy comment about taking down the system.
Yeah. Yeah, the bucket is cool. The bucket is actually a member of Rage Against the Machine, confirmed.
Stanley and the bucket waited in blackness. Was it over? Yes, they had done it. Stanley and the bucket had defeated their greatest
won.
and darkest enemy, freed themselves from the tyrannical grip of the evil mind control machine. Freedom was now mere moments away. Excitedly, the two of them began to discuss the kind of life they wanted to live once they stepped through this massive door. The bucket wanted to learn to roller skate. Stanley wanted to sneeze in every country on Earth. Both of them wanted to begin watching a movie, any movie, but then stop it halfway through and begin watching it in reverse from the end.
Oh.
True, it was a simple life they envisioned, but it was one they'd lived together.
Why would you do that?
With one another to lean on, to trust, to support, and
Oh no.
What? Wait. What was happening? Why had the door stopped? Was Stanley and the bucket not about to be freed? An unbearable silence filled the room, lingering in uncertainty.
Oh
Until
no.
finally the truth hit Stanley square in the face. This building did not want the bucket to leave.
Oh no.
Even
Oh
the facility
no.
itself recognized the incredible calming presence of the bucket.
No.
Needed the soothing warmth.
No.
Go to any lengths not to part with the bucket. No.
No.
Stanley can't leave this place. Not while he has such a precious bucket in his arms. Not while this building has anything to say about it. Stanley realized he would never again leave this very room. But at least he has the bucket. To be trapped eternally in darkness isn't really so bad, Stanley thought to himself. As long as I have my bucket with me, right? I'll be okay, won't I? Stanley gulped. Very soon now, he was about to find out.
Got it.
Stanley needed the bucket's warmth and comfort now more than ever. Perhaps, Stanley, we must move on from this broom closet, simply because I have no remaining stickers. If I did, you can guarantee we'd be in here for hours. But alas, no stickers.
No stickers.
But at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls. Stanley gasped in horror.
Not the bucket.
Had this been the bucket's plan all along?
Bastard.
To take over the machine and claim the power for itself? How could the bucket have betrayed him like this? Stanley was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust when suddenly an image appeared upon the enormous screen. Birds.
Birds.
Silly
birds.
Silly birds. The control buttons became active again.
Fly birds. Look at them. Look at those silly birds.
Through one video of silly birds after another, and then it dawned on him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all.
Look at them.
It was a facility for monitoring and surveilling silly birds all over the world. The mind controls were only a facade to disguise its true intentions.
Look at them.
Known this all along.
Look at him go.
Stanley marveled at the metal genius in his hands, the one who had pointed him towards
Look at those
this
silly
incredible
birds.
discovery. Stanley and the bucket never found
Love
freedom
them.
because they spent the rest of their lives.
My God, look
here
at
in
those
this
guys.
place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds imaginable.
Look at that guy. Look how silly that guy
Of
is. Oh
all
my
the
God.
possible paths his life
Oh my God,
could have
penguins.
taken, this one was surely the best.
Oh my God, they're so stupid.
And Stanley was happy.
Oh my God, they're so stupid. Oh my God, look at them. They're so dumb.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the
No, we
large
didn't.
door that read,
Nope.
Mind Control. Although this passageway had the word escape written on it, the truth was that at the end of this hall, Stanley and the bucket would both meet a violent death.
Nope. Nope, we're going.
The door behind them was not shut. Stanley and the bucket still had every opportunity to turn around and get back on track.
Nope, I'm taking the bucket
At
to the
this point,
Smasher.
Stanley and the bucket were knowingly walking
This is the
forward
one
into
with
a
the
very
game
painful
dev
death
museum, I
for each of
believe.
them.
I like this one. I think this was my favorite ending. I think my favorite gag, it was the video, the collectible video. Oh no, we're back here again. I don't like being back here again. The bucket's gonna suffer for my mistakes. The bucket's gonna die for.
As the machine whirred into motion and Stanley and the bucket inched closer to their demise, Stanley reflected on how meaningless the bucket's warmth and comfort
Can't
had
believe
turned out to be. To be sure, it puts the
this
mind and the
bucket.
soul at ease to embrace the bucket. But what use is a sense of ease when you're about to be crushed to death? This is what Stanley thought to himself, and he sort of kicked himself for wasting so much time carrying a bucket everywhere. Farewell, Stanley.
Yeah.
Farewell, Stanley, cried the narrator, as Stanley and the bucket were led helplessly into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, the bucket's life came to an end, as it was crushed violently to death.
Not the bucket. The Stanley
It was a
Parable.
shame, the death of such a magnificent bucket. It's true that all buckets are radiant in their own
Oh,
way, but
no.
this one stood above the rest.
Is it a bucket
It was
museum?
a glorious bucket to behold.
The bucket welcomes you to the grand exhibit. You are standing at the precipice of knowledge. Much like a bucket itself, the human mind is frequently empty within, a carnivorous void. But through use of the exhibit in front of you, the mind becomes full and enriched and substantiated. Knowledge of the bucket and its history is the only true knowledge we really have. Will you take what you learned here with you into the world? Will you accept with an open mind what may be challenging about the information in this exhibit? Will you change the lives of yourself and your loved ones as a result of this exhibit? Or will you turn a blind eye and continue to live as you were, in ignorance, darkness? The bucket. Ah, yes.
Can
Bucket.
you see how arrogant it was for Stanley to take a bucket like this and to claim it for his own? Can you see the hubris that blinded him? Can you see that the bucket is far more noble than Stanley will ever be in his short life?
25 buckets. A photograph of 25 buckets, the greatest number of buckets ever captured on camera. The photographer experienced catatonic shock for several weeks as a result of the euphoria from exposure to this many buckets at once. That's a lot more than 25 buckets, my friend. Nice. It's the Da Vinci drawing thing. A bucket with two handles. This bucket is depicted as having two handles. Such a design has never been created in real life, having been deemed too dangerous and recklessly experimental. Every year, dozens are put to death for attempting it. Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Inferno bucket. A replica of the Inferno bucket, which in the medieval era was so powerfully alluring that it drove dozens of nations to war with one another for control over it. Billions died, and yet in spite of it all, the simple fact remains no one can control a bucket. The stress analogy of a bucket. Worrying, negative forecasting, negative thinking, lack of reassurance. The stress bucket, presented without commentary. Vulnerability equals strength and size of the bucket. Stress equals the length of water in the bucket. Coping strategies equals holes. Rest and relaxation, doing something you enjoy. Rest and relaxation. Oh. Yeah. 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 Man, I feel like I've just re-entered into Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Been recording that game. That game's not good. Cave drawings. Well, we know that buckets predate the existence of mankind. We do not know by how long. This cave drawing depicts early man's discovery of the practical uses of the bucket, by which time the bucket had already likely been around for several millennia. Notice in these drawings how the bucket is allowing itself to be used, having judged humanity to be worthy of its treasures. Ah, yes. The deer, not worthy. Humans, worthy. Bucket worthy.
No man can own a bucket, and certainly not a bucket as dazzling to behold as this one. It is man who should kneel before the bucket.
The hanging bucket. This piece symbolizes the necessary relationship between bucket and humanity. However clear our grasp of the bucket may be, there is yet more that is always out of reach. This distance inevitably is for our own good. Ah, yes. Oh. Oh. Hmm.
But there is something we can do. Something we can do together, you and I, that will right this terrible wrong.
Oh, we're back
Let
here again.
Stanley die. Let him be crushed by the machine. Don't reset the game. Don't give him another opportunity to run off with another beautiful bucket. We can save the world's buckets from their treatment as tools and implements if only we let Stanley die together. The bucket shall take its place as ruler, as leader, as commander of a new world, a new vision.
Dead. Died.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's
Sure
office.
didn't.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. He looked down at the bucket in his arms. Am I crazy? He asked the bucket. The bucket returned his gaze, but said nothing at all. That's strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, yet felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort.
Oh no.
And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket. It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps. How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong. Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket. And indeed, now he noticed that the rooms were repeating, which was, of course, very odd. And now he felt himself floating off the ground. Oh, gracious, he exclaimed. Without my bucket, I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard it, calling to him.
Stanley! Stanley, it's me, the bucket.
Could it truly be? He rushed forward from room to room,
Oh.
passing by one bucket
There's
after
a
the
bunch
next.
of them.
None of them were
There's a bunch of
None
them.
were his special
My
bucket.
special bucket.
Come to me, Stanley.
My bucket.
Find me.
There's a bunch
He
of
had to
buckets.
find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the
No.
only way to truly restore his sanity. And then suddenly, he froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from.
Behind him.
The real bucket was inside of him all
Oh
along.
no.
It was incredibly painful.
Oh no.
Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out.
Died. Mariella?
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
There's gonna be a
Mariella
bucket.
woke up on a day like any other. She arose,
Except
got dressed,
there's a
picked
bucket.
up her bucket of comfort and security, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. Right away, she knew what the problem was. This man had no bucket. Of course he'd gone mad, ranting and raving about a narrator describing all of his actions and how everything is predetermined and free will is an illusion and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only he'd taken his bucket with him. Perhaps he didn't even realize he'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Mariella thought, and she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself.
Heck
My life
yes.
kicks ass.
My life
and she backflipped
kicks
all the way to work.
ass. Back to the escape pod, boys. I cannot see fucking anything. Can we escape this time? Send him. Send him on his way. Oh. Oh no. Salute you. Goodbye. Oh. He's free now.
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed
He's
a memo.
gone!
Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a
Replacement
memo.
bucket.
And try not to lose this one too, you dolt.
You dickhead.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens.
Up.
Just as Stanley was about to proceed further into the mind control facility, he tripped and fell over the railing and into the dark void below. Thankfully, he fell directly onto the bucket, which safely cushioned his fall.
Good.
Now, what to do next? Stanley wondered. Stanley and the bucket could find no way out of this enormous pit, and so eventually they decided that the best thing to do would be to simply get comfortable down here. So they set up a little couch and relaxed. It really wasn't so bad down here, a bit cold perhaps. After some time had gone by, they installed a few shelves as well. And a sort of kitchenette.
We're making a life for ourselves down here.
But it wasn't until the rugs and the standing lamps came in that it really started to feel like a home. In fact, after some time, Stanley realized that it had been ages since he had even thought of
How would
the
you
mind
cook with
control facility at all. He'd never gotten to
the
fully
lamp
explore
there?
what was up there, never been able to unearth the many mysteries of the mind control facility. This lack of closure began to eat at him. Soon he was dwelling on his regrets, and the state of their home slowly decayed as Stanley became withdrawn and neglected.
Oh no.
It
Oh no.
Stanley wasn't usually like this.
Oh
He tried to
no.
reach out to him again and again, but to no avail.
Stanley got
All
addicted to
Stanley could
drugs.
think about, all he
The
could
bucket
think
wanted
about
him to
was
stop.
Going back, doing it over again, staying on the path. It was a mistake to leave the path. It was a mistake. It was a mistake. I need to do what the narrator says. I need to see the true ending. This made no sense at all to the bucket, which was simply trying to live its life down here as comfortably as possible. Yet Stanley was unconsolable. This isn't an ending. This is just a hole in the ground. The bucket sighed. True, it wasn't an ending, but it's where we happen to be. And maybe, possibly, if we accept the reality of things, maybe this will become an ending eventually. It's what the bucket was counting on. The two of them waited for a very long time.
Okay. Now we go back up the elevator. Again.
Wait, Stanley said to the bucket. Can we go back up? When I was pressing those keypad buttons, there was something very intriguing about the number 3. I want to go back so I can try pressing the number 3 again. The bucket said nothing.
The bucket was like, bruh. Fuck is wrong with you, bruh? Actually, though. Crazy person.
Here we are, said Stanley. Now I'm going to try out that number 3 button. He took the bucket over to the keypad and began absolutely slamming on the number 3 over and... Wow, he said. The number 3 is such a special button. I'm having the time of my life. Stanley looked expectantly at the bucket, but the bucket remained silent. This was a shock to Stanley, who had always felt such a connection with the bucket. How was this not as exciting to the bucket as it was to him? Once Stanley had had enough of the number 3, he got back in the elevator.
You sure did.
Perhaps the bucket had missed something. Perhaps it had not seen how much joy Stanley got from slamming the number 3 repeatedly.
So dumb. Now we go back up.
No, said Stanley to the bucket. You can't go on yet. Not till you understand how much the number 3 means to me. You and I have been through so much together, and I just want you to see what I see. Feel the happiness I feel. He smiled at the bucket, and the bucket said nothing.
No. Not the bucket. The bucket can't ignore me. Not forever.
Here we go, said Stanley. This time I'll really show you. He ran to the number 3 and began to wail on it like a musician on a beloved instrument, weaving a concerto of truth and passion. He wielded the number 3 like a fine artist would wield a paintbrush. He told stories through the number 3, stories of his dreams and hopes and fears. And the whole time, he looked to his bucket for a reaction of some kind. Anything to let him know that the bucket appreciated what he was doing. The bucket conveyed absolutely nothing at all, only silence. Crushed
Awful.
by a wave of dejection,
Awful.
Stanley returned to the elevator.
Awful.
Stanley and the bucket were so close. They'd always been there for one another. Why suddenly could the bucket not connect with this passion of Stanley's? The question caused Stanley to ruminate the whole way down the elevator. He knew that there must be a way to get through to the bucket, to communicate fully with his dear friend. Surely there was a solution, mustn't there be?
There must be. The bucket. The bucket knows all and sees all. The bucket never stops. Oh.
Said Stanley. I know what to do. I know how to fully express this feeling in my heart. He decided right then and there that he would hold a press conference where he would speak to the public on all matters relating to pressing the number 3 over and over. He would elaborate fully on what the number 3 meant to him and why he felt so alive when pressing it. Then the bucket would be able to see his joy through the eyes of others. It would get to see the world react to this discovery of Stanley's. And it would be through the public eye that the bucket would finally understand Stanley's work.
All eyes on Stanley. And the bucket?
For months, he advertised and marketed his press conference, building excitement around it, developing and rehearsing it, until it couldn't be refined a single measure further.
I'm not gonna have a
Day
panic attack
arrived,
this time though, because I have a
Stanley
bucket.
was as prepared as he'd ever been
3.
for anything in his life.
3.
This was it. One last chance to win the bucket over. One opportunity to
3
share
again,
a true
3
connection
again.
with a loved one.
The dude who came up with pizza. An audience with. Nice. Don't worry guys, we got the
There was
bucket.
no one here.
Oh.
Nobody had come to the press conference to hear Stanley speak,
Oh.
to listen to him talk
What it really
about
means
what
press
it
the
really
number 3 on the
means
keypad
to
over and over.
press the number 3 on
presented
a
by
keypad
Stanley.
over and over. He was unloved, uninteresting. He was a failure.
Oh.
And in that moment, Stanley knew that the bucket would never again take him seriously.
No.
There would be no connection, no deeper understanding.
No.
The bucket merely sat there in his arms, indifferent. And so it began that slowly, over many years, the two of them grew more and more distant.
No.
They spoke less and less, neither wishing to state the obvious, that any sense of real respect between them had eroded since that day at the press conference. There would be no more games, no more long conversations about passion and pursuit, only a silence that consumed the space between friends. And Stanley, having for once in his life discovered the warmth and comfort of true companionship, was cast back into the unremarkable normalcy of loneliness.